Stop calling Europe a continent. Now, my name's Luke. I usually teach people about minerals and crystals and stuff like that. Today I'm doing geography, which is something I'm doing progressively more and more, which is something I can do because it's my page and I'll do what I want. If you like educational content, stick around. If you don't, I don't know, go and follow a Kardashian or something, or that fucking hot tour girl who for some reason is famous. Stop calling Europe a continent, right? The only reason we call it a continent is because Europeans say it is, right? That's the only rationale we have for Europe being a continent. Now, I've discussed this in previous videos to varying degrees. The continents, as we understand them, bearing in mind they're taught differently in different parts of the world, make no fucking sense whatsoever. You can do use of geological metric, in which case you're using tectonic plates, of which case there's anywhere between 7 and 14 of them, not including microplates, which completely throws a spanner in the works because it means that India is all of a sudden a continent, Africa is all of a sudden 2 continents. So that, as far as most people are concerned, makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You've got giant land masses surrounded by water, in which case you've got a real problem because Africa, Asia, and Europe are literally connected with each other, which means that all of a sudden that is sort of Afrasia. I forget what it's called. There's actually a term for it. In geopolitics, it's called the world island, which is essentially the amalgamation of Africa and Asia and Europe. But it doesn't matter what kind of standardized definition that we use. It doesn't matter what kind of standardized definition for a continent we lean on. Not one of them allows for Europe to be a fucking continent. There's no rationale or justification for it whatsoever. Now, very often, we use the Ural Mountains, which is sort of somewhere around there, sort of midway through the western portion of Russia, and then everywhere west of that is generally considered to be Europe. It gets a little bit more problematic the further south we go. We get to sort of the area around Istanbul, formerly Constantinople, where we are now trying to expect the people of Turkey to consider themselves both European and Asian simultaneously, which is a little bit odd and makes no fucking sense at all. But of course, Europe is attached to the rest of Asia, which collectively is referred to as Eurasia. Now, there's no real meaningful rationale for referring to Europe as being its own independent continent in any context, including geological, because where some people define continents as it pertains to tectonic plates, Europe and Asia are on the Eurasian tectonic plate, so that makes no fucking sense either. The only real rationale for why Europe is considered a continent is because Europeans say so, and because there's this smidge of racism going on in there as well. Now, this kind of tracks back very far. The earliest framework that we've got for Europe being a continent stretches back to characters like Herodotus, who in historical circles is considered to be the father of history because he was the first person to kind of implant scientific methodology into the study of history. So he's very well regarded in a historical context, or amongst historians. He's generally considered to be the father of history. Now, he was famous for documenting the Persian-Greco War. If you want a frame of reference for that, think of the film 300, Gerard Butler. This is Sparta! That film, right? Second Persian-Greco War, Battle of Salamis, Battle of Thermopylae, Battle of Plataea, things like that. Second Persian-Greco War. 490 BCE, that's First Persian-Greco War, Battle of Marathon, etc., which is a period of conflagration between Greece, which is this here, and what was the Achaemenid dynasty, which is modern-day Iran, Persian Empire. So Herodotus essentially picked this geographical classification based on a bias anchored in the First and Second Persian-Greco War. His frame of reference was, we're Greek, therefore good, they're Persian, let's keep them over there, they're distinct from us, we can have this bit, aka Europe, they can have that bit, therefore Asia. That's sort of the proto-framework for where Europe comes from. But we move forward in history and we reach that sort of colonial era, which was largely underpinned by racism, culminating in eugenics in the 1940s, where we basically colonized much of the planet. And because we did that, it kind of allowed us to draw a lot of maps. They're very accurate maps, but it also kind of allowed us to draw lines where we bloody wanted. So because there was a smidge of racism going on here, we kind of drew some arbitrary line which is different on different maps about where Europe is. And generally, for the most part, although there is some variability to this, it generally ends from sort of the Ural Mountains and then sort of includes a portion of Turkey. Now, there's no other meaningful way of rationalizing this. You can't do this based on culture, really, because there's various different cultures within Europe. You can't do it based on language. I mean, you've got the Romance languages in the south and in the UK. You've got the more Germanic languages in the UK as well, and Germany. And then you've got the Slavic languages in Norway and Sweden and Finland and Iceland. You've got the Slavic languages. The Nordic languages in the north, Slavic languages in the east. So we can't use language as a rationale for justifying a continent. You can't use culture because there's so many different variabilities there. The culture in Greece in no way resembles the culture in Iceland. We could perhaps maybe get away with the underlying values. We certainly can't get away with things like religion. You've got Catholicism down here, Protestantism up there, you've got Greek Orthodox there, you've got Eastern Orthodox there. Religion makes no fucking sense either. The only real rationale for Europe being considered a continent, frankly, is racism.